When you look up at a constellation, like the Big Dipper or Orion, have you ever really wondered how they got their names? Well, it turns out the night sky is basically the original storybook, and it's filled with drama, heroes, and monsters. So let's dive in and see how these epic tales from Greek and Roman mythology became our very first map of the stars.
It's a pretty incredible thought, isn't it? Thousands of years ago, our ancestors were standing under this exact same sky. But imagine it, no city lights, no smartphones, no telescopes, just this silent, massive darkness with countless little lights scattered across it. They must have felt the exact same sense of awe, that same wonder that we get when we're lucky enough to see a truly dark sky today.
So when you're faced with that infinite canvas, how do you even begin to make sense of it all? How do you map something so huge and mysterious? Well, they didn't have star charts or GPS. They had something way more powerful. They had stories. What they did was they projected their own world right up onto the heavens. And oh man, what a world it was. They filled the sky with this huge cosmic soap opera. Seriously, it was like a dysfunctional family of gods and monsters whose jealousy and passions and epic battles were all playing out across the night sky.
And what's really fascinating is that even the ancients, guys like the philosopher Plato, they knew these weren't, literal history. In fact, Plato came up with the word mythologia to draw a line in the sand. These were imaginative stories, not fact. But they were stories meant to get at deeper truths about the world, about things like ambition and love and revenge.
And of course, every great drama needs a cast of characters. So first, you have the Titans. They were the OG rulers, born from heaven and earth itself. They were just these raw, primal forces. The myths just call them huge monsters. And then they get overthrown by their own kids, the Olympians, who I'm sure you've heard of. And they were a totally different story. Yeah, they were powerful, but they were also incredibly human. They were jealous and petty and vengeful and just deeply flawed.
And the heart of all this drama, it was usually right at the top, with the king and queen of the gods, Zeus and Hera. Their relationship was just this constant storm of cheating and absolutely epic revenge plots. Seriously, Hera's jealousy was the engine for some of the greatest myths ever told. It basically created a whole generation of heroes and monsters.
So all that drama happening on Mount Olympus, it wasn't just celestial gossip. It became a way to connect the dots in the sky, turning all these random points of light into immortal heroes, terrifying monsters, and cautionary tales that, believe it or not, we can still see today. One of the absolute best examples of this is a total blockbuster story that plays out every single autumn. It's the legend of the great hero Perseus, whose one single adventure fills an entire region of the night sky. And just look at this cast. It is all right there in the stars. You've got Perseus, the hero. You've got Andromeda, the princess he has to rescue. There's her vain mother, Cassiopeia, and the worried king, Cepheus. And of course, you can't forget the terrifying sea monster, Cetus. Every one of them is a constellation, all grouped together in the sky, just like they are in the story. So the story goes like this. Queen Cassiopeia makes a huge mistake. She brags that she's more beautiful than the gods. Uh-oh. So for punishment, her daughter Andromeda is chained to a rock to be sacrificed to the sea monster Cetus. But just in the nick of time, our hero Perseus comes flying in. He's fresh off his victory over Medusa. He saves the princess, kills the monster, and marries Andromeda. And to commemorate this whole incredible saga, the gods put every single one of them up in the stars forever. The ancients, they loved a bit of poetic justice. So even though Cassiopeia's family was saved, the gods kind of felt she got off a little too easy for her vanity. So they stuck her on her throne up in the heavens, where she's doomed to circle the North Star forever, and she spends half her time dangling upside down. It's a permanent, and probably pretty embarrassing, reminder not to get on the gods' bad side. But the story doesn't stop there. See, this whole mythological world, it's all connected. It turns out that Perseus's own great-grandson would grow up to become maybe the most famous hero of all time, the one and only Hercules. Okay, so Hercules has a ton of legends, but in this one, a monster named Cacus makes the very, very bad decision to steal some of his cattle. Hercules tracks him down to a cave, but Cacus tries to hide by breathing out this massive cloud of fire and smoke. This was a bad move. It just makes Hercules even angrier, so he just leaps right into the smoke and, well, let's just say he handles the situation.
Now, these stories were not for the faint of heart. The details were graphic, they were brutal, and they were designed to be completely unforgettable. This wasn't some clean, heroic fight. It was raw and violent. And that's a detail that was supposed to stick in your brain when you looked up and saw the constellation that marked the battle.
And the thing is, the legacy of these myths isn't just trapped up there in the constellations. We've actually brought these stories down from the heavens and woven them right into the fabric of our world today, a lot of times without even realizing it.
I mean, just think about our solar system. The planets aren't just balls of rock and gas. They carry the names and the personalities of the gods. Venus, that beautiful, bright planet, is named for the goddess of love. Saturn is named for the Titan who ruled before being overthrown by his son, Jupiter. And Uranus, the planet discovered beyond Saturn, is perfectly named for Saturn's father, the original god of the heavens.
And our language is just littered with these myths. When we talk about chaos, we're actually talking about the great, dark abyss that existed before creation. The Furies, the giants, the nymphs, they were all set to be born from a single, violent cosmic event. And even today, the call of a siren still means a temptation that's irresistible and dangerous. These words still carry the weight of their mythic past.
So ultimately, that's what this all comes down to. Mythology took the night sky from being this terrifying, chaotic, empty void and turned it into a familiar canvas. It was the very first human storybook, and it was filled with tales of courage and vanity, love and loss. It was a way for our ancestors to find some order in all that chaos, and maybe most importantly, to see themselves reflected in the heavens. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? The ancients looked up at the very same stars we do, and they filled that darkness with stories that have lasted for thousands of years. So as we push farther out into that same darkness, as we discover new worlds, new wonders, it really makes you ask, what new stories are we going to tell about the stars?